Hello, my name is Mason Duke, and I'd like to welcome you all on behalf of the Economic Alliance. Today we're going to be talking about the things to consider when deciding on a price for your product. Arriving at the right price is a balancing act. Low prices aren't always ideal. Customers often see price as reflective of quality, and avoid excessively cheap goods accordingly. Even if a lower price makes the product popular, it may prove too low to recuperate the production costs and turn a profit. Similarly, high prices may alienate the frugal customers, losing sales in the process. Not every business has access to a wealthy demographic interested in luxury goods. As this dilemma demonstrates, pricing is a difficult thing that requires a lot of thought. To emerging entrepreneurs, it's easy to be overwhelmed and paralyzed by indecision. Let's ease some of that uncertainty by peeking behind the pricing curtain. Your price should incorporate the costs you incur, the market you're aiming to capture, your own personal goals, the standards of your industry and activity of your competition, and the unique value proposition of your business. There's no uniform method to selecting a price. The same thing won't work for every business. It's paramount to conduct research and consider what works best for your product line, marketing approach, and ideal customers. Remember also that prices don't have to stay static indefinitely, and probably shouldn't. You can experiment with different approaches over time. In order to explore pricing further, we'll need to take a closer look at all these factors which will impact your ultimate decision. Any analysis of pricing strategy needs to factor in expenses, or costs. Let's begin by establishing definitions of the different types of costs. Direct costs are associated with production and sale of goods and services. Indirect costs are all of the other expenses required to maintain a business, those that are not directly associated with making sales. Fixed costs remain consistent regardless of output, while variable costs fluctuate depending on the output. As the circular diagram shows, some of these cost varieties can overlap. More on that to come. This chart illustrates the possible combinations of cost types while also giving examples of each. As we can see, each cost can differ on 2 points. It can be either direct or indirect, and either fixed or variable. While a cost cannot mix these opposites by being direct and indirect, for example, it can and does include aspects of each type, by being direct and variable, or indirect and fixed, and so on. We'll get a better sense of what this means in the coming slides. Direct costs are often referred to as costs of goods sold, or COGS for short. As direct costs, COGS are the cost of everything that is directly tied to making a single sale. Think of ingredients in a restaurant. They have to be purchased to make and sell the food. In addition to being direct, COGS are also variable. The more product you produce and sell, the higher they will be. In other words, there is a COGS associated with each separate service or product you provide, like offerings on a menu. A soup that's sold for $6 might cost $2 to make, meaning that as more soup is sold, more COGS accumulate. But the sandwich you're selling will have different ingredients than the soup, and a different COGS accordingly. It's worth noting that in reality, your COGS will often end up being higher than they should be on paper. This is because as people, we're imperfect. Measurements are imprecise, materials are wasted, broken, or spoiled, times to achieve tasks can vary. While the difference between ideal and actual COGS is often minor and tempting to simply ignore, small discrepancies like this can cripple a business over a long period of time and should be monitored closely as a result. Indirect costs are also called overhead. They facilitate production and sales without being directly tied to them. They tend to be fixed, meaning that they remain constant despite fluctuations in production and sales. Big examples of overhead include rent, utilities, insurance, supplies, and maintenance. Most forms of labor are also considered overhead because a lot of labor is paid hourly, and it's difficult to tie a precise amount of employee time to the completion of a sale. Furthermore, often that same staff would be on the job making a wage even in the absence of sales. This makes their labor an overhead cost, a necessary expense in order to operate the business, regardless of how many sales are being made. For many businesses, especially those with brick-and-mortar locations or lots of staff, the various forms of overhead will be their largest expense. This brings us to gross and net profit, two of the most important numbers to a business. Subtract the cost of goods sold from your revenue to find your gross profit. Revenue can be calculated by simply multiplying your price by the quantity you've sold. This equation makes it easy to plug in potential price points alongside estimated sales to see the impact on profit margins. Quick note on this, your gross profit margins should be fairly high as they'll have to cover all of your overhead expenses while leaving enough net profit to pay both you and the IRS. Then subtract overhead expenses from gross profit to give you net profit, which is where an owner's draw and taxes come from. It's also the number which leftover funds can be reinvested back into the business in order to upgrade or expand. It's worth taking a close look at all of these to identify any major problems that might arise. Rising costs of materials might lower gross profit, while shifting insurance premiums or higher rent would impact net profit. These numbers don't stay static over time with ignored, which is why prices are always changing. The subject of net profit and the owner's draw brings up an essential question to ask yourself. How much money would you like your business to make you? What standard of living are you shooting for? This goal will inform how you set your prices. Since the owner's draw is taken from the net profits of your business, there are many deductions that occur between your monthly revenue and the money reaching your pocket, including all the expenses incurred by your business. Try and ensure you're at least making more than minimum wage once everything else has been accounted for. For entrepreneurs just starting out, it's also smart to save up a cushion to help you get through those early months. Owner's draws can rarely be taken right away, as new businesses need time to establish themselves, gain familiarity, and accumulate customers. Beyond your own financial goals, it's important to consider how you envision the future of your business. What kind of company do you want to be? Generally speaking, there are three basic paths: low prices but high sales volume, mid-range prices with mid-range sales volume, or high prices with lower sales volume. Think about wristwatches. There are expensive luxury products like those offered by Rolex, mid-range but presentable pieces such as the Fossil and Invicta lines, or the affordable and utilitarian options provided by Timex and Casio. These brands fill different market niches, address different consumer needs, and are accordingly priced along different metrics. And this doesn't just apply to wristwatches. You wouldn't expect to pay the same price for a t-shirt at Walmart as at Nordstrom, but you'd also be expecting different things from those t-shirts. The same goes for a sandwich at Burger King versus one in an upscale brewery. The price you land on for your product should be in line with your ultimate vision of your company and its future. Much of your commercial objective comes down to prioritizing a target market. Hoping that everyone wants to buy your product or service, while ambitious, is not a winning strategy. Having a precise idea of who wants what you're offering will give you a better notion of what you should charge for it. Consider the disposable income of your target customers. Are they wealthy, strapped, comfortably middle class? How much are they willing to pay for what you provide? Financial status isn't the only factor to consider either. The more you know about your ideal customer, the better. Think about it like a psychological profile. Any seemingly irrelevant fact could prove invaluable. How old are they? What do they do for fun? What kinds of values do they have? There will be exceptions and outliers, but don't be afraid to generalize a little. Your target market won't give you an exact price, but like the other data we've been examining, it will provide a useful range within which to situate your options. A process that will assist you as you contemplate your commercial objective and ideal customer is market research. Market research can help you learn about the niche your business will occupy by answering questions about similar enterprises. Who are your competitors? How do they operate and what prices do they charge? Can your area support another business in the same industry? Market research comes in two varieties, primary and secondary. Primary research is information that you seek directly from the source, perhaps by interviewing your competitors or visiting their establishments. Secondary research is utilizing data compiled by others in books, trade journals, and online. Both primary and secondary research are useful undertakings to engage in, and though it should be conducted throughout the lifetime of a business, it proves especially invaluable before, during, and after the startup period. All businesses solve a problem or fulfill a need, including your competitors. Your unique value proposition is what sets you apart from the competition. It's the reason why a customer chooses you specifically. As the diagram displays, your unique value proposition sits at the intersection of that which you do well, your customers desire, and your competitors fail to adequately provide. Though unique value propositions span a large range of possibilities, most of them will have some impact on the price. A restaurant that sets itself apart with fresh and local ingredients will likely have higher prices to offset those higher costs, for instance. Conversely, the unique value proposition of a business could be lower prices, though this is often only feasible for businesses that buy materials in massive quantities or rely on some kind of paid membership. Think of Walmart, Costco, or Amazon. Whatever course you decide on, having a clear sense of your unique value proposition is a key component in settling on a price point. Now that we've established the preliminaries, let's narrow the field and focus in on the three major factors to consider when deciding on a price. 1. Your expenses. Are your prices high enough to cover your expenses and leave enough room for profit? 2. Competition. Are your prices within an acceptable range of variation as compared to similar businesses in your area? 3. Unique value proposition. Have you accounted for the aspects that make your business special and determine how much a customer is willing to pay? We've introduced these already, now let's look at each one in a bit more detail. The first and most important consideration in pricing is your costs. Are your prices high enough to not just meet your expenses, but provide enough profit to both pay you and keep the business going? This sounds simple, but it's difficult to maintain without a proper understanding of your costs, especially as they change over time. Inflation rises each year and the cost of living with it, which for a business will include labor, materials, and other expenses. If your prices stay static for too long, margins will become slimmer as rising expenses erode your profit. It seems intuitive not to charge too much more than competitors in your region. If you're offering a similar product or service at a much higher price, you'll likely see lower sales. What's less intuitive is resisting the tendency to undercut the competition. At first glance, charging substantially less than the competition appears to be an easy way to attract customers. This strategy is often unsustainable for small businesses, however, resulting in a race to the bottom that shatters already slim profit margins. Furthermore, a huge price drop can negatively impact the way customers value what your industry provides, resulting in downward trends in the local market. For these reasons, it's generally advisable to keep your prices within a reasonable range of your competition. Not necessarily identical, but not too much higher or lower either. Observing the pricing precedents set by competitors in your local market is just one more reason to engage in market research on a regular basis. Ultimately, your costs and competition can only tell you so much about pricing. They provide valuable guidelines, but are light on specifics. Your unique value proposition is the last missing piece here. It's a well-known adage of the market that companies charge what people are willing to pay. Your unique value proposition has a big impact on that. Customers can and will pay higher prices when the product or service substantially differentiates itself. Think of organic food, environmentally efficient vehicles, or friendly and reliable customer service. If you focus solely on covering your costs and matching your competitors, you might be losing sight of the real value your company provides and losing out on potential profit accordingly. At the end of the day, there's no silver bullet in pricing. Every industry and individual business has different needs and requirements. Furthermore, the right answer one year may be wrong the next, as conditions change over time and the market constantly fluctuates. Begin by thinking broadly about your commercial objective or long-term vision for the kind of business you want to run. This ties into the ideal customer and target market you're shooting for, as well as your personal financial goals. With those preliminaries done, you can pivot to the big three factors and get to the nitty-gritty of pricing. By understanding your expenses, researching trends in your industry and competition in your area, and ruminating on that special something that sets you apart from the rest of the crowd, you'll have all the information you need to begin establishing sensible prices for what you provide. From there, it's all about tweaking and experimenting to get it just right, then updating and reassessing as time passes and circumstances change. Don't be afraid to try things out or get things wrong. Mistakes can be valuable if you use them as opportunities to learn. Here are a few links to some free online pricing resources that you can use to plug in different numbers and play around with profit margins. Have fun. To wrap things up, let's take a look at a practical example of pricing. I've consulted my colleague Lionel Marcial, a trained chef and former restaurant owner, on the restaurant pricing process. He's provided a detailed breakdown of a few sample menu items for our analysis. Let's look at one menu item as a detailed pricing example. Ham, steak, and eggs is fairly simple, using only 4 main ingredients: the ham, steak, and the eggs, plus the hash brown and toasts that come as sides. We'll assess the costs and amounts of those 4 ingredients, and then reach a price that gives us a gross profit margin of 40%. Gross profits tend to be higher in the restaurant industry because there's a lot of overhead to cover. Additionally, costs of ingredients constantly fluctuate, so by building a cushion into your margin, you can absorb some of those shifts without having to change your prices as often. Let's say we're buying ham steak at $7.50 per pound. We're serving 8 ounces in each dish, and there's 16 ounces in a pound, so each dish uses half a pound of ham and costs $3.75 in ham steak. We're paying 35 cents per egg and using 3 for each plate, so that's $1.05 in eggs. Then we've got 4 ounces of hash browns at 12 cents an ounce for 48 cents, plus 2 slices of toast at 15 cents a slice for 30 cents total. Altogether, that comes out to around $5.58 in ingredients for every order of ham, steak, and eggs. We're going to go ahead and factor labor in here too, since someone has to prepare the food, and that prep time should be fairly consistent. So we'll assume 15 minutes of prep time from an employee who makes $17 an hour, and that comes out to $4.25 for that 15 minutes of employee time. Adding that to the $5.58 from the ingredients gets us a total cost of goods sold of $9.83 on this dish. Now we can adjust up from there to get that 40% profit margin we're looking for. To get a 40% gross profit margin on this product, we'll have to mark up the price over 60% from what it costs us. So we're going to mark that $9.83 in cost of goods sold up by 67% and sell the dish for $16.40, yielding us a gross profit margin of about 40%. There's net profit to think about as well. You've got rent, utilities, insurance, and any labor not already accounted for in your COGS. But unless your restaurant has a very small menu, you won't need any one dish in particular to cover all of your overhead and make you that net profit that you need. You do, however, want to make sure that you're at least selling enough of each item to warrant keeping it on the menu. If it doesn't sell, it shouldn't be there. Now let's apply the same process to a different item, in this case the traditional omelet. Several of the ingredients are the same, and having multiple dishes that use the same ingredients is wise when running a restaurant, but the amounts and processes are different, so the price will be too. For this omelet, we'll need 3 eggs at 35 cents a piece for $1.05, 3 ounces of diced ham at $5.50 per pound for $1.02, and 3 ounces of cheese at $6.50 per pound for $1.23, plus 4 ounces of hash browns at 12 cents an ounce for 48 cents, making the total ingredients cost $3.78. Then we've got 10 minutes of 2 employees' time at $17 an hour, which comes out to about $5.67 in labor costs. This makes our total cost of goods sold between ingredients and labor $9.45. So if we'd like to keep that 40% gross profit margin, we should sell the omelet for somewhere around $15.75. How about the calculation for something even simpler, like a beverage? Take soda, for example. Soda syrup bought in bulk is very cheap. Let's be generous and say it's 25 cents for each 16-ounce drink. We won't worry about factoring in labor for it because the amount of time it takes an employee to pour and serve a soda is negligible, and they're likely doing other tasks in combination. From there, it's really just a case of dealer's choice. A couple dollars is around the industry standard these days. $2.98 in this case is what we've landed on. That's well above the 40% profit margin we've been using on food items, but that's okay. It leaves a large cushion for free refills, staff beverages, spillage and wastage, to-go cups, lids, and other incidentals, while still earning plenty of profit. Overall, beverages tend to be low-cost, highly profitable items sold in conjunction with food. That's all for today. As always, don't hesitate to reach out with pricing inquiries or other questions. I'm Mason Duke, and I'll see you next time.